What type of person is your soulmate going to be like? This is the truth that the Darakaraka, the spouse significator in astrology, helps you uncover. But we can go deeper than that. By analyzing the exact house position of the Darakaraka in your birth chart, we can gain insight into what types of relationships your soul is craving to experience in this reincarnation, and ultimately what lessons you're here to learn and grow from through your intimate relationships. So before we jump into the specific house significations for all the 12 houses, let me just recap the basics for anyone who missed the first video about the Darakaraka. The Darakaraka is the significator of the spouse. It indicates the type of person you're supposed to be in a committed relationship with in this lifetime in order to enable your optimal soul evolution. It comes from Gemini astrology, which is one of the most ancient astrological teachings that can be found in Vedic texts dating back over 5,000 years ago. So how do you find the Darakaraka in your chart? It's very simple. You look at the degrees of the 7 traditional planets used in Vedic astrology. We look at the Sun, the Moon, Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and Saturn, and we compare the degrees. The Darakaraka is the planet with the lowest degrees. And if you go to my free birth chart calculator, which I will link in the description below, there is a list of planets here when you enter your birth details, and it tells you exactly what degrees each planet is in. And in order to find the house position, you can look at the column that says Bhava on it, and you will see that the Darakaraka is placed in a specific Bhava. By the way, if you haven't watched my first video on the Darakaraka, I highly encourage you to review it because it gives you a very, very in-depth description of the type of person you're meant to be with in this lifetime. It gives you a general idea of the instinctual nature and the personality type of your ideal spouse. Now, the Darakaraka is not the only spouse or relationship factor to look at in an astrological chart. We also look at Mars in a woman's chart, Venus in a man's chart. We can also look to Jupiter in a woman's chart, depending on what kind of astrological teaching you're following. Most importantly, we look to the 7th house and the Lord or the ruler of the 7th house for very specific indications of your relationships and the type of relationship partner that you're meant to encounter in this lifetime. The difference is that the Darakaraka elevates things on a more soul level as well. So it can manifest in very concrete ways, but it can also really indicate what lessons you're here to learn, what psychological transformation you're here to go through because of what your soul is craving to experience in this lifetime. So I really like looking at the Darakaraka because so far it's the most accurate methodology I found to really get a sense of our intimate partnerships and our ideal spouse that can really enable our optimal soul evolution in this reincarnation. One thing I want you to keep in mind as you listen to the different indications of the 12 houses is that there are many layers and many types of interpretations for each house meaning. Astrology is ultimately archetypal, and so sometimes we can see very concrete manifestations of the house placements, but sometimes it can be more spiritual, more psychological. For example, if your Darakaraka is placed in the 12th house, this can literally manifest as a foreign spouse or as you both moving to a foreign country, because the 12th house signifies faraway lands. But it can also be on a more metaphorical level because the 12th house rules charity. So maybe your spouse or your relationship enables you to do more charity work, to be more giving and more selfless. So as you can see, both are equally valid and equally important. It's just a matter of different layers of interpretation. And ultimately, I want you to keep in mind that it's important to view relationship through the lens of growth and evolution. I don't believe that relationships happen to us. I think everything in our life happens for us to enable us to experience the multitude of the universe, to experience the magnificence of creation itself, and also to grow as people and to grow as souls in this reincarnation. Now let's dive into the specific interpretations for each of the 12 houses. So what happens when the Darakaraka is placed in the 1st house of your natal chart? Well, I have news for you. Once you meet your significant other, once you get into a significant relationship, your life will be dramatically impacted because the 1st house represents our physical body, our appearance, our health and vitality to an extent. But most importantly, your entire life path begins with the ascendant, with the Lagna in Vedic astrology. And so when your Darakaraka, the significator of your spouse or your significant other, is placed in the 1st house, that means that somehow they will influence everything else in your life. Somehow they will trigger a completely new life path for you. They will put your life on a completely different trajectory. So when you look back on your life, you will see that there will be a before and an after your significant relationship or relationships. Either way, due to the presence of your spouse in your life, something will significantly change and it will have a tremendous impact on the rest of your life. And this can take many different forms. They could maybe inspire you to completely change your lifestyle, what you eat, how you exercise, how you take care of your health, how you take care of your appearance, how you dress, how you want to present yourself in the world, because the first house is, our physical body. But it can also be a completely new career path. Maybe through their emotional support, through finding that person that gives you stability and a sense of safety and security, you will be brave enough to explore a completely different career avenue, a completely different profession. Maybe before that, you had to have a boring corporate job that you actually kind of hated. And once you meet your spouse, you'll be like, you know what, maybe now I can actually afford to turn my hobby into a career, into a business. It can be maybe moving to a completely different country or a completely different town. And so everything in your daily experience changes completely. You will be surrounded by different people. You will have to change your social environment, social circle. You will have to also maybe change jobs because you relocated together with your partner. It can really take many, many different forms. So a couple of possible transformations I've written here are, for example, your life path transformation entirely. Your appearance or body might change. Your lifestyle might shift. Maybe you will adopt a completely different lifestyle. Maybe your partner will be very wealthy, and that will allow you to completely change how you live your life. Maybe your identity will change. Maybe through their support, their encouragement, their kind of love and empathy, you will feel safe to more authentically express yourself out in the world, and you'll uncover some layers of your personality that you never felt free enough to express. Maybe they will affect your confidence in your self-expression. Maybe before you meet them, you were very shy, very self-conscious, very humble. And through the love and the support that you receive from your partner, you will be more extroverted all of a sudden. You will want to have more friends. You will want to present yourself more courageously out in the world. As we mentioned before, it could be a completely different career or professional environment, different social situation. Maybe they will just completely change your individuality, or maybe they will introduce you to a new cause or a new hobby that will become part of your new life and your new identity. And maybe they can impact your physical wellness, your physical well-being. So there are a lot of different ways in which your spouse can really change your life. And because it's the first house, it's very difficult to say specifically what exactly will change, because the first house is literally you, your life path, your body, your vitality. And also we can't really know if it will be through positive or negative circumstances. Maybe you will meet a wonderful partner, and that partner will be so supportive and so loving that it will allow you to completely embrace who you are and express yourself very authentically and very bravely. But maybe it can be a negative experience. Maybe your partner will betray you. Maybe your partner will let you down in a very dramatic kind of scenario. But once you break up with that person, maybe you will have a long relationship where it wasn't really making you happy, and then once you break up with that spouse or that partner, you will completely reinvent yourself. But it will have happened because of what you had to experience and the transformation on a psychological level that you experienced through breaking up with that person. No matter what exactly the scenario is going to be, no matter how your life changes and your trajectory shifts because of your significant partnerships and relationships, the most important core spiritual lesson that you're so here to learn with this placement of the Darakaraka in the first house is that you're here to develop your individuality, to embrace who you really are, to have the courage to fully be yourself, to discover your authentic self, to follow your unique path courageously. And that might mean that you will shift your life into something very, very different from what your upbringing was, from what your family or your close friends expected of you. So because when we have strong, significant placements in the first house, we're really here to develop our identity and have the courage to live life on our own terms. The first house is very much about individuation and self-expression and kind of crafting a completely new life path based on our own ideas. So here are a couple of examples of famous people who have the Darakaraka in the first house. For example, Grace Kelly. I don't know if you know the story of Grace Kelly, but basically she was a very glamorous, very beautiful and celebrated Hollywood actress who ended up marrying, I believe, the Prince of Monaco. And so she became a European proper princess. So if that's not a change in your entire lifestyle and life path, I don't know what is. So she relocated to a different continent. She became literal royalty. She started a family with her husband. So, her life definitely was never the same. And I'm sure it shifted in more ways than one. Another famous person who has the Darakaraka placed in the first house is Salma Hayek. And Salma Hayek has been married to quite literally a billionaire for, I think, 10 or 15 or close to 20 years now. So of course, that has had a tremendous impact on her entire life path, on her maybe how she expresses herself in the world, what she does in her day-to-day life, even though she already before him had a much more luxurious life than the average person, and she was a celebrity. But by marrying a literal billionaire, I still think that had a tremendous impact on her day-to-day experience. Then we also have Barack Obama. And so who knows, maybe if he hadn't been with Michelle Obama, he wouldn't have become president. We can't, of course, know that for sure. But certainly the Darakaraka being placed in the first house, and I think they have always been known as a team, a proper partnership. They really collaborated and had a very productive partnership as husband and wife, and that affected their professional achievements as well. So I really can imagine that his spouse, Barack's spouse, really played a significant role on his entire life path. And then finally, we have Prince Harry here. Now talk about a big transformation. What happened when he met Meghan Markle, and now that they're married, I think now she insists on being called the Duchess of Sussex or whatever. I'm not into the whole royal drama of it all. But definitely through his significant relationship, he's felt more free to be fully himself, right? So he separated from the royal family and he started a completely different quote-unquote civilian life, and he seems more fulfilled, more happy, and more free to express himself. I think the royal kind of restrictions on his life and expression in his early life never really fit in with what he really wanted to be and what really made him happy, and hopefully that's the case. So those are some examples of the Darakaraka placed in the first house. What happens when your Darakaraka is placed in the second house of your birth chart? Well, the second house is very much about our self-worth, our resourcefulness. It has the theme of Taurus, and Taurus is all about being useful. The second house is about recognizing our inherent self-worth, feeling the value that we have inherently within us, and finding the tools to leverage all the inborn skills and attributes that we have so that we can be useful to the people in our close environment, and then of course develop mutually beneficial relationships with them where we can help each other. So this is the theme of the second house. So through your relationship, somehow you're here to reestablish your self-worth, and also you're here to take your familial responsibilities, because the second house is very much about our family environment and our immediate environment of people that depend on us and people that we feel somehow responsible for their well-being. And so with the Darakaraka in the second house, that's why it's also related to material resources, right? Because the more material resources we have, the better we can take care of ourselves, our family, everyone that is our dependent. If we're head of a corporation, the employees can be part of that second house team because we're literally paying their wages, right? So the second house is very much about our self-worth and how we utilize what is available to us to be worthy to ourselves and to be resourceful for our sake and for the sake of other people that depend on us. So the core themes with Darakaraka in the second house, are wealth, resources, self-worth, material stability, and familial responsibility. So these are some of the core themes. And of course, there are multiple ways this can play out, but certainly your partner, one way or another, is going to impact your material resources, your material foundation in life, as well as how you view family and how you view your responsibilities. Because the second house is one of the most responsible houses. It's a fixed, Taurus is a fixed earthly sign. It takes its responsibilities and material situation very, very seriously. So one way or another, through having significant partnerships with other people, and especially with your significant other, you're here to develop these skills of feeling your self-worth, feeling that you're worthy of good things in life, and being useful to yourself and other people so that you can create stability and material abundance for everyone that depends on you. So some scenarios here I've listed are financial transformation, resourcefulness, development of self-worth, family support, dependence, legacy building. Food and nutrition can be impacted here because that's also a very big second house theme. So maybe through your partnership, through your relationship, you will completely change your eating habits, how you view nutrition, how you view your diet. It can have an impact on your language and your speech. So maybe through your spouse, you end up learning more languages, or you change the way you speak, the way you communicate with other people. It will impact also your attitude towards familial bonds. So maybe you come from a family that is a little bit more kind of self-individualistic. Maybe everyone is out for themselves, and then all of a sudden you meet your spouse, and then through your spouse, you kind of start viewing family in a completely different way. You start seeing the value in a stable familial foundation, and then together you start building a legacy of kind of growing your family, being very responsible towards family members, and utilizing your skills and your resilience and consistency in life to create material stability for everyone in your environment. So material foundations are a big theme with this house. So ultimately, no matter what the actual scenarios are, because there are so many different options that we can review here with the second house placement, but the ultimate spiritual lesson here is to learn about material and familial responsibilities, to cultivate our self-worth, to develop our resourcefulness, to be of value to self and others. So it's all about creating value here. It's very much a second house theme. So feeling valuable and worthy ourselves, valuing our family valuing us as well. So we expect to be treated with respect and appreciation by our family members, learning the value of material resources and the value of our own innate skills and abilities. So just a couple of examples of famous people here who have this placement. First, we have Scott McKenzie. I think that's a beautiful example because Scott McKenzie is basically the ex-wife of Jeff Bezos. I believe she is the wealthiest woman in the world. I could be mistaken there. I don't really track these things, but I'm pretty sure she's up there. And so from what I know, she proactively did her best to not be a billionaire because she donated so much money to charity. And so here we have a very beautiful second house theme. So together with her partner, she built a very, very stable material foundation of abundance. So she utilized her innate skills to find a way to be really useful to society, because in the end of the day, no matter what our opinion is of Jeff Bezos and other billionaires, ultimately, they did create something that is useful to people in one way or another, because if it wasn't useful to us, we wouldn't be giving them our money. So together with her husband at the time, she managed to find ways to be very useful, practically useful in the products and services that she provided to other people. And now that she built her kind of wealth, her material stability and foundation, she's able, from a place of abundance, very much a second house in a Taurus theme, material abundance, to actually give to other people, to fulfill her responsibilities to people who might depend on her, people and organizations that can benefit from her material abundance. So I think that's a really beautiful example. We also have Bill Clinton here. And Bill Clinton, as you know, no matter what kind of scandals were plaguing his presidency, and Hillary Clinton and everything in the media has been going on about these two, they still remain the family unit, right? And so they kind of portray this kind of image of strong family unit no matter what happens. They kind of take their commitment very seriously, and they take their material responsibilities and familial responsibilities very seriously. I believe they also have foundation that they're running together. Hopefully they do some actual charity through that, through their material abundance and stability, they're able to help other people as well. Fingers crossed, you never know what actually goes on in these organizations, right? And then another famous example is Penelope Cruz, who's married to Javier Bardem now for I don't know how many years. I think it's been definitely more than a decade. And they really have this kind of aura of them of being a family unit, right? Because even though they're Hollywood celebrities, you don't really hear much about them in the tabloids. Not that I really read the tabloids, but you know what I mean. They don't really have like a very dynamic, very up and down type of life. It's more kind of a stable family life that they seem to have built together. So that's what happens when you have Darakaraka in the birth chart. There is a very, very big focus because of your relationships. They teach you lessons about self-worth, about material foundations, about being useful to other people and taking care of your family and immediate material responsibilities. So what happens if the Darakaraka in your birth chart is placed in the third house? The third house is a very interesting house. It's a very dynamic house as well. It's a bit of a mixed bag, the third house. It can be a little bit of a challenging house, but it's not an actual Dushtana place. The 6th, 8th, and 12th houses are considered Dushtana houses, which I believe literally translates into houses of suffering. So the third house takes a lot of effort. That's the key theme of the third house is skills and effort, because everything that we achieve through the third house is achieved through applying ourselves, through developing our skills, our abilities, our capabilities, our talents. And we're not afraid to compete with others. We're not afraid to prove ourselves, to utilize our courage and willpower. So the key themes here that I've written down for the third house are effort and skill development, courage, communication, peers, and community. So if you have the Darakaraka placed in the third house, it's very possible that you will partner up with people who are literally your peers in whatever you're endeavoring to do in life. Maybe together you take part in competitions. Maybe together you're part of a community, of a cause, and you collaborate with each other there. There's a lot of communication with one another. There's a lot of camaraderie, a lot of teamwork. Or potentially through your relationship somehow you're encouraged to develop your courage, your bravery, your willpower. The third house is very much about recognizing that things happen in life when we put effort into them and when we focus on them. So it's all about using our will for good. What do we actually want to focus on? What do we actually want to create? So that's why the third house can be a beneficial house in many ways, but also it can be a bit of a challenging house because it's not easy, right? It's not easy to be disciplined. It's not easy to put effort into things. It's not easy to struggle day after day to perfect your craft, because the third house rules the skills that we develop through practice, through putting effort into them. In order to become a pianist, in order to become a guitar player, in order to learn any kind of craft or skill to a high level, you need to put in the hours, you need to put in the work. And that means denying yourself distractions and pleasures for the sake of the goal that you're trying to achieve. So through your relationships and through your partner, somehow you will be inspired to pursue your talents, to perfect your skills in some way, to become more skillful, more knowledgeable, better at communication, better in honing your talents. And you will be more courageous as a result of it, and you will not be afraid to do hard things. You'll not be afraid to apply yourself. Another theme, as we mentioned here, is teamwork and collaboration. So somehow through your spouse, it can be directly with them, or it can be just as a consequence of your relationship with that person. You will be involved in certain collaborative efforts with other people in certain teams and organizations where you get to collaborate and do a lot of work on a day-to-day basis to achieve a certain outcome, a certain practical outcome. The third house is considered a house of desires. And so the third house teaches us that when we desire something, it's up to us to put our will, our focus onto that thing and be diligent and put effort and be courageous about what we want to achieve. But it's a house of desires, which means basically we're collaborating with other people, we're working with others towards the fulfillment of our wishes and desires. Another possible scenario might be that in order for you to have that relationship with your significant other that you have chosen, that you fell in love with, you have to put the effort in. So it might not be the easiest of relationships. Maybe you have to struggle a little bit. Maybe you have to figure things out. Maybe your first relationships will be a little bit of a trial and error. Maybe it won't work the first time or the second time, because the third house is about trial and error. It's about trying things, putting effort into things, making mistakes, learning along the way, not being afraid to experiment. The third sign is Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. And Mercury is all about being courageous enough to experiment, to not have a preconditioned mind, to have an open mind to try new things until we find what works and what doesn't work. So maybe with the Darakaraka in the third house, your first few, romantic entanglements or relationships might teach you how to be better at relationships, how to be better at picking a better spouse or a better partner, And so that's why it can be a little bit of a difficult place. Another possible context could be that you meet the love of your life, but they are from another country and you can't actually live together for the first couple of years because maybe you have kind of financial troubles. Maybe one person's career prevents them from living in the same place. Maybe you need to fight the bureaucratic system of visa processes and citizenships in order to actually be a family one day. So this is what the third house represents, just kind of overcoming some smaller obstacles that with time, with patience, with putting effort, with setting our mind on something, it can be overcome. So the spiritual lesson with displacement is to learn to apply yourself with courage and effort when you desire something, because ultimately this is what our partners and our relationships are here to do. They're here to teach us something about ourselves, and they're here to make us grow on a soul level. So again, the lesson here is to learn how to be courageous, to put effort into things, to fight for things, to become stronger and better through challenges and through competition. And some examples of famous people who have Darakaraka in the third house, I have listed here Ben Affleck, Pamela Anderson, and Kurt Cobain. And if you look at their kind of dating history and their relationship, you'll see that it hasn't always been a smooth ride. So they've had their positives and negatives experiences, but relationships have been traditionally kind of hard work for them. And obviously Kurt Cobain passed away very soon, rest in peace. But I remember that there were some issues between him and his spouse. They had some kind of, the media was against them. They had some problems with ill-wishers and I think even some legal trouble at some point. So you see, with all of these examples, relationships have not always been a smooth ride, and they basically they put effort into things and they fight for the love that they're here to manifest. So this is kind of what you can expect through the lessons of the Darakaraka placed in the third house. Now, what happens if your Darakaraka is placed in the fourth house? The fourth house is literally the house of fortune. And so on the emotional sphere, the fourth house represents our emotional safety and nourishment, our happiness, how happy we feel at home, how happy we feel within ourselves, because the fourth house is the most hidden part of the horoscope. So intimately, within ourselves, are we happy or not? Because things can seem very glamorous on the outside. We might be ticking all the boxes, but the question is, are we really happy? Are we really content? Do we feel comfortable in our skin? This is what the fourth house is about. And by extension, on the material realm, it can also represent fortune, as in being wealthy, being fortunate materially in life. Because let's face it, if we are materially unfortunate, that creates a lot of struggles in life, and it can create some negative emotions as well. The more wealthy we are, the more abundant we are and secure materially, that also leads to emotional happiness and relief from certain struggles in life. So that's why in Vedic astrology, the fourth house can also mean that you just become more fortunate. If you have wonderful placements in the fourth house, or if the ruler of the fourth house is in a great condition, maybe you're just going to be fortunate in more ways than one. So when we have the Darakaraka placed in the fourth house, through our relationships, we learn what it means to be happy. Maybe our spouse, our significant other, will tremendously impact how happy we feel within ourselves, how happy we feel with our home environment, how domestic we are. Are we really happy with ourselves? Are we emotionally content? That's why I've written here that the core themes of the fourth house are happiness and fortune in life, home and family, comfort and security, and emotional nourishment. So these are the key themes that you're here to develop and work on through your significant relationships in this reincarnation. So somehow, once you meet your significant other or through your relationship together, your fortune in life will completely change. Hopefully for the better, but it can play out in many different ways. But certainly you will learn about what it takes for you to be happy. There will be some major transformations in your interior life, in your internal sphere, in your private experience. There will be tremendous transformations in your home environment, how happy you feel at home, how much time you spend at home versus how much time you spend in your career, because the 10th house is about our professional life, our very visible actions in the world, and the 4th house is the opposite. It's what is internal, what we do in the privacy of our homes and in the private sphere of our emotional experience as well. And so somehow through your partner, through your relationships, there will be a change in the dynamic between what you do out in the world and what you do in the domestic sphere. You will learn how to be nourished, how to nurture others and feel nurtured yourself. You will learn about what it takes to create a cozy sanctuary for yourself in your home environment and how to be ultimately feeling fulfilled. So it's a moksha house. It's a house of emotional well-being. It's about liberation from struggles. Moksha means liberation. And so 4th, 8th, and 12th houses are very much about being liberated from the struggles of existence on earth. So the ultimate spiritual lesson here, no matter how it actually plays out in your life, what you're really here to learn with this placement is how to be happy, how to create a fulfilling private sphere, and how to develop a sense of home and belonging. You're going to learn through your relationship or relationships the meaning of comfort and of emotional safety. And I have a couple of very interesting examples here, famous people with this placement. Meghan Markle actually has her Darakaraka in the 4th house talk about changing of your fortune in life, right? She married a literal prince. She married into royalty. So that's a very, very literal manifestation of changing your fortune in life, because the 4th house represents our fortune. And then we also have Victoria Beckham. And I think those of us who are old enough to remember the whole Spice Girls era, when Victoria met David Beckham, it was always a big thing. It always had a very big impact on her life. And so definitely she ended up spending more time at home. She kind of, after a while, gave up her kind of performer career. She was focused a lot on raising their family. So there was a bit of a shift in the ratio between 10th and 4th house activities in her life. And ultimately, there was a big shift in her fortune, right? Because she was already famous and wealthy, but David Beckham certainly helped in that regard. So definitely we can see this kind of 4th house of both emotional fulfillment, domesticity, family focus on home environment, and literal fortune in life play out in the life of Victoria Beckham and Meghan Markle. What happens when your Darakaraka is placed in the 5th house? Now, the main themes of the 5th house are creativity, self-expression, romance, children, and artistic intelligence. So this covers a lot of different themes in a person's life. But for example, maybe you meet someone who inspires you to be more creative, to really focus on your creative pursuits, to really create something of worth, of notability in your life. Maybe you were an artist, but through your relationships and partnerships, you become a more prominent artist, which enables you to create even more art. Maybe you meet someone who inspires you to become more artistic. And creativity can take many different forms. I already had a video where I mentioned, it was the video about Jupiter and how learning the lessons of Jupiter can enhance our life and make us more happy. And one of the lessons of Jupiter was actually creativity. Creativity is everything that is birthed out of us, really. Creativity is something that can even play out in the corporate sphere, in the business arena. It doesn't have to be literally with paintbrushes and playing an instrument. Creativity is everything that we do out of our intelligence, something that wouldn't have existed if it wasn't for us. So certainly through your spouse, through your significant other, or through your major relationships, you will have more creativity in your life. You will produce more creative work one way or another. You will create products, services, certain works of relevance for other people, and you will be more inspired to produce more, to create more, to express more of who you are, because the 5th house is very much about our self-expression. It's a dharmic house. The 1st, 5th, and 9th houses are dharmic houses. Dharmic houses are all about the self. Who are we? How can we establish ourselves as individuals? How can we authentically express ourselves? And the fifth house is very much about our creative and stable self-expression. So taking what is within and creating something in the outer world based on our authenticity and our internal inspiration. The fifth house is also very much about romance, about falling in love. So this can be a very romantic placement. This can mean that you're seeking to experience in this lifetime what it really means to be infatuated, what it really means to fall head over heels in love with someone. And that can also be a creative process, right? Like when we're in love, we can think of so many things we want to do with our partner, how to spend time together, how to make them happy, how they can make us happy. This is all a product of creative imagination and inspiration, right? And when we're in love, we really are inspired to do things that we otherwise wouldn't have done. That's why they say that basically great poetry and great art can be done either when you're in love or when you're heartbroken, because it really inspires you to awaken your creative juices and your self-expression. So maybe, through your significant others, through your relationships, you're here in this reincarnation to really experience what it's like to be completely in love, to be in love and to be romantic in the very kind of fairy tale, romantic Hollywood movie type of way. The fifth house can also represent children. So that's another aspect of existence that we're here to experience because of our spouse. And maybe there will be a huge focus on children once you meet your significant other. It's possible that before you met them, that wasn't really on the agenda. You had other things that you were thinking about. But once you fall in love, once you meet the right person, maybe you decide to put all of that on the back burner and focus completely on your creative self-expression through raising your children. That's one of the manifestations. I know a famous astrologer who has their Darakaraka in the fifth house, and it has played out beautifully for him because he not only met someone that he can co-create with in his professional sphere. So his partner also works in astrology and helped him with his astrological creations and artistic work and creative output. But they also had several children together, and he's a very devoted, very involved father. So that's a very beautiful manifestation of the fifth house. And the fifth house in general is about our artistic intelligence. It's our inner, what they call natural intelligence. So not something that you can learn at school, just kind of your creative mind, your imagination. So maybe you become an author, maybe you develop your writing career. The fifth house is very much about our imagination and basically creative output through our mental processes that come seemingly out of nowhere, like an inspiration from God, from the universe. And because the fifth house is about creative intelligence, maybe through our spouses, through our relationships, we can be put in completely different intellectual circles. Maybe the spouse is very intelligent, maybe they're very, very smart, and they're surrounded by very smart, artistic, or intelligent people. And through your relationship, you find yourself in these circles that encourage your own intellectual development as well, because the fifth house is very much about our intellectual faculties and imagination. So I've created here a list of potential scenarios of Darakaraka in the fifth house. We have, for example, impact on our creative output, our artistic endeavors, romantic love, infatuation, authentic self-expression, fun and entertainment. The fifth house is very much about expressing ourselves in fun ways and, letting our hair down and having fun with creation, having fun with our mind. That's why it rules imagination, it rules games and entertainment. It can be about creative collaboration and projects. So maybe through our spouse, we end up working on some very important creative projects with other people in our professional sphere, but in a very kind of creative outlet type of way. The fifth house, as we mentioned, has to do with children, with intellectual enrichment, playfulness, and childlike wonder. So maybe through your partner, you can finally awaken the child within you, and you can live with more childlike happiness and wonder as well. And as I've listed here also opportunistic speculation, trying your luck, because the fifth house is about being lucky and taking opportunities, taking advantage of opportunities that life presents with us, and speculation. So gambling, for example, any kind of risk taking, any kind of gambling is ruled by the fifth house. So who knows, maybe you get married to a poker player and you become a poker player star yourself. So either way, whatever the actual real life scenario is for your life with the Darakaraka placed in the fifth house, what is the main spiritual lesson here? What is the lesson we're here to learn through all of these experiences? So we're here either to create something from the heart, or to awaken our romantic nature, to really experience what it's like to be in love, or to express our authentic intelligence creatively, and simply to experience joy in life. And so a couple of examples here of famous people who have this placement are Brad Pitt, Jennifer Aniston, and Elizabeth Taylor. And so the interesting thing about all of these celebrities is that if you look at their kind of dating history and marriages and relationships, I think all of them have been with fellow actors or producers or directors, basically people who work in the same creative environment. And so through their spouses, through their relationships and one-on-one partnerships, they were able to expand their creative work somehow. So maybe without those kinds of key relationships, their creative work would have been more limited. But because they got to meet the right people, be in the right artistic circles, they were able to produce more creative work through those relationships and partners. What happens if the Darakaraka is placed in your 6th house in the birth chart? Well, the 6th house has a multitude of representations, and some are a little bit more positive, some are a little bit negative, because the 6th house is one of the Dushtana houses. The Dushtana houses are the 6th, 8th, and 12th house in Vedic astrology, and they are associated with some level of suffering, unfortunately. And so the 6th house represents ultimately our practical intelligence. The 6th house, alongside the 5th house in Gemini astrology, is considered one of the significations of strong intelligence in a person's chart. So if you have strong placements in the 6th house, you're likely to be more intelligent, smarter than the average person. And the intelligence that the 6th house gives is practical intelligence, so what they call street smarts. And it's developed through not only trial and error, but also literally going through obstacles, solving problems in real life. And through those challenges, through ill-wishers, through overcoming delays and obstacles in your life, you learn how to manage life better. You learn how to be a smarter person. You learn what to expect. You learn the lessons. And that can really shape your mind, and you end up becoming much more pragmatically intelligent than the average person. So ultimately, the 6th house, like all houses, has its very positive manifestations as well. But it's associated with overcoming some problems, solving some issues, maybe dealing with some health issues, with some obstacles, with some delays on the path of becoming more smart, more intelligent, more capable, more crafty. And so when we have the Darakaraka in the 6th house, it's through our spouse and through our relationships that we learn these difficult lessons. And it can be because you together as a partnership have to go through these challenges, or maybe unfortunately your spouse or your partners and significant others are the ones causing you those delays and your problems. Maybe they're the ones who are your enemies and your ill-wishers. Hopefully not, but it can be a potential manifestation. But ultimately it doesn't matter, because what you're here to learn is how to be capable yourself, how to be street smart, how to be intelligent enough to make your life better, to improve your life. The 6th house is very much about optimization, solving problems, improving on things. And so you learn how to improve your life, how to optimize your life, and how to be smarter and manage your life smarter by the experiences that you go through with your relationship. So a couple of themes here that I've listed are resilience and practicality, obstacles, improvements, street smarts, service, because the 6th house is being of service, of very literal, pragmatic, practical service to others. For example, 6th house signifies health issues and nursing. So this is what we mean by service, literally helping other people. So that's another core theme of the 6th house, and also healthy or productive routines. So learning how to develop healthier routines. So there are many different scenarios that we can see play out with this placement. Maybe there are some delays and some obstacles on the way to you having a relationship in the first place. Maybe you fall in love with someone there, but there are a lot of obstacles, a lot of delays and enemies along the way to you becoming a couple, a family unit. Or maybe your partner causes you to face some obstacles in life and some delays in your life. Maybe because of your relationship, there are some obstacles in the way of your career, and you learn how to manage those and how to overcome those. Maybe through your relationship, you learn how to be more health conscious, how to optimize your health and wellness, how to improve your healthy routines. experiences. Maybe you become more practically intelligent because of kind of obstacles that you overcome with your significant other. And these can be very small, like daily problems that you solve together. It doesn't have to be something very dramatic, but it can also be through some legal issues, through divorce, through maybe someone suing your partner and you having to go through the legal process, and in the process basically learning a lot about your rights and what you can do in the future. Maybe it's through divorcing your spouse, but it can also be together with your partner going through some litigation. There can be many different manifestations. Perhaps your relationship triggers you to improve your daily discipline, your routines, or your work ethic. Maybe as a couple, you end up creating a large family. Maybe you end up having 3-4 kids, which means that you have to become extremely materially, pragmatically responsible, both of you, and to take your material duties very seriously. That's very much a sixth house theme, is becoming very dutiful and very resilient when it comes to your material responsibilities. And so through all those issues and responsibilities and problems, you improve your work ethic, you improve your problem solving skills. Maybe you're dealing with some debts together, or maybe you incur some debts because of your partner or your significant other, and maybe you attract some enemies on the way to making the relationship happen that you then have to deal with. Maybe they will inspire you to self-improve because they are the ones that are on this path of ultimate productivity, self-improvement, biohacking, and through living with them, you get exposed to all that knowledge, all that information, and together you start improving your daily experiences and improving your health. Maybe you develop your survival instincts because your spouse is a very toxic person, and maybe before you meet your partner, you were a very kind of people-pleasing, very super nice kind of person that allows people to walk all over you. And through meeting your partner is so toxic and so harmful for you that you learn how to draw boundaries, you learn how to survive things, you learn how to put your foot down and how to be more rigid with people who don't deserve your time and kindness. So there are a lot of different ways it can play out. But ultimately, the spiritual lesson of having the Darakaraka in the sixth house is to become more street smart, to become more resilient, to learn practical intelligence through overcoming challenges, to develop your responsibilities, and to be of service to other people, and certainly to develop your humility, because the sixth house teaches us that not everything in life has to be easy and has to be glamorous, and maybe we become more mature, more humble through our experiences with relationships. Or in a very practical, very real sense, maybe there can just be simply some delays to you having a significant long-term relationship. So if you look at some examples of famous people who have Darakaraka in the sixth house, we have George Clooney here. We have Leonardo DiCaprio. I mean, these are both celebrities that were very, very desired, considered very charming, very attractive, very sought after by women. But it took Clooney a very long time to actually settle down. I mean, he had an early relationship that didn't last very long from what I know, but his marriage to Amal Clooney happened when George Clooney was in his 50s. So you see, it caused a lot of delays to actually meeting the right person, your significant relationship. Leonardo DiCaprio goes without saying that he's not even there yet. He still hasn't had a real long-term significant relationship. We can't really know the exact reasons for that, but with the Darakaraka in the sixth house, there are certainly some obstacles there. There are some karmic blockages to him having an easy, flowing, smoothly long-term relationship with someone. Another interesting celebrity example here is Charlie Sheen, who also has Darakaraka in the sixth house. And if you look at his past relationships, they certainly haven't been a smooth ride. I know that one of his ex-wives was suing him, and they had to go to court because they had to call the police due to some altercations, some physical problems that they had. Drugs, of course, were involved on his side, at least. I don't know the exact details, but definitely, there was some legal issues there. And if you recall, he actually had an STD discovered. And through that, a lot of women that he was intimate with in the past ended up suing him for a lot of money as a compensation for him exposing them, basically for endangering their health. So this is very much a sixth house theme of, your ex is suing you for money. And then we also have Mariah Carey here and Katie Holmes. Again, a bit of a rough ride there with relationships. So Mariah Carey has had some positive experiences with relationships, but certainly there have been some ups and downs there and some obstacles and some issues. And Katie Holmes had a very kind of famous divorce from Tom Cruise. And I don't know him personally. We can't really know exactly what has happened in those relationships. But I remember Nicole Kidman being very happy when she ended up divorcing Tom Cruise. So it's very possible that Katie Holmes also was quite relieved to be done with that marriage. So some legal processes there, some sixth house issues we see in those placements of the Darakaraka in the sixth house. And again, as I mentioned in the beginning of this video, it's very important to note here that we shouldn't view ourselves as victims. I mean, we can, of course, we always can, and in many ways, we probably deserve it. We probably have been victimized by the events of our lives, of other people, by life in general. I think to some extent, we all become victims in one way or another, and we all experience problems, delays, obstacles, enemies, and suffering. But the key lesson of the Darakaraka in the sixth house here is for us to evolve to a better version of ourselves, to improve ourselves, to be more resilient, to be more responsible, to be more materially and practically minded, to be smarter about the difficult things in life. And so ultimately, it can be a very empowering message of us becoming smarter and more capable through some potential issues that we encounter through our relationships. What about if your Darakaraka is placed in the seventh house? This is a bit of a double whammy, right? Because the Darakaraka is about our spouse, our significant other, and the seventh house is about relationships, it's about partnerships. And so the key themes here are really us learning about compromising, about having one-on-one partnerships, both business and intimate relationships with other people, about how to maintain harmony and balance in our relationships, how to be fair in our give and take with other people. And it could also be about how to interact with the public, because the seventh house can be about public recognition, about dealing with the public, maybe as a civil servant, as a government official, or any kind of publicly known persona, because the seventh house can have connotations of fame in dealing with the public. So these are the core themes here of the seventh house: relationships, compromise, business partnerships, balance, and public interaction. And it can be one or another. It doesn't have to be all of those things simultaneously, of course. But either way, it's a very important placement here for relationships. It basically puts relationships and partnerships, interacting with other people, right on the agenda for the person who has Darakaraka in the seventh house. Because the seventh house is ruled basically by Libra. It's a house of desires. It's a Kama house. And desires are always going hand in hand with other people, right? A lot of the things that we desire, a lot of the good things in life involve us interacting with other people in some capacity. And so the seventh house is a very social house. It's basically teaching us through our spouse or our significant other or our relationships, our important partnerships in our lives. We're learning how to be diplomatic. We're learning how to weigh the pros and cons of things. We're learning how to be balanced, how to be tactful, how to be considerate of the needs of the other person. So maybe in previous lifetimes, in previous reincarnations, there was a lot of focus on us, what we want to achieve, how we want to express our lives, how we want to do things, and the way we want to do them, our own way, my way, or the highway. And now there is a focus here on developing your seventh house, on really understanding what it's like to interact with other people. And that can be a challenging thing, right? It's not easy to have harmonious relationships with others, because there's a lot of things we have to compromise on. We have to consider the needs and the desires and wants and the issues of other people. And we have to be understanding, tolerant of others. This is a sign, Libra is ruled by Venus. Venus is the planet of social niceties, of social charm, of tactful communication, because anytime we interact with other people, there is an element of a negotiation here. We have to always consider the other person. It's not just about us anymore. So again, with the Darakaraka placed in the seventh house, there's a big theme here of learning to work on your relationship skills, learning how to be in partnership with other people, learning the value of partnering up with other people. Yes, we can achieve a lot of things on our own. We can be very self-sufficient. We can be very self-actualized. But ultimately, we can achieve even more if we successfully partner with other people, right? There isn't really any big achievement, whether in the business sphere or when it comes to causes, to organizations, to big contributions to society somehow. It always involves somehow other people. And so learning how to work in a team with others, learning how to understand other people's needs and to not put ourselves first, to kind of swallow our ego and pride sometimes, to really compromise with other people. This is a very big theme here. So I've listed some possible kind of manifestations, some key areas of focus with the Darakaraka in the seventh house. So we have partnership focus here, compromise, negotiation, trust and trustworthiness. That's a key theme in any kind of relationships, both in business partnerships and intimate relationships. We're learning how to trust others, how to put our faith in another person, but also how to be trustworthy ourselves so that the relationship can last. Because, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right? So people might not want to be in a relationship with you if you're very self-centered or if you can't be trusted. So there's some important lessons here about how to be someone worth having a partnership with in the long run. There can be themes about public recognition here, fame, business alliances is a very big theme. Maybe you become a business partner. Maybe you start a company or a business together with your significant other. There can be lessons about give and take, about balance, fairness, and justice, about public capacity and visibility somehow. Maybe you will be with a partner who's more well-known than you, someone who's a public figure. Maybe you get married to someone who's a government official, and so you can't really have a very private life anymore because everything is kind of out in the open. You become a public personality, someone in the public eye, and that completely transforms your life. You become more visible suddenly because of your relationship with someone who's a public figure. There can be core themes here about relationship dependency. So it can go either way. Maybe you're a little bit too codependent, and now you're learning how to balance that. When you move into a significant relationship, you learn how to be interdependent, how to be your own person, but also compromise successfully with your spouse. And of course, some key focus here on popularity and diplomacy, because as we said, the seventh house is other people. It's the opposite of the first house. So it's about our popularity with others. Do other people want to be in our presence, work with us, interact with us, and have fun with us? That's kind of the seventh house theme. But no matter what the actual scenario is here, how it exactly plays out in your life, the core spiritual lesson of the seventh house placement of Darakaraka is that you're learning to understand the other side. You're learning how to keep relationships balanced, fair, how to interact effectively with others, and to provide mutual value. A couple of examples of famous people who have Darakaraka placed in the seventh house. We have Hillary Clinton here. Talk about becoming more well-known and publicly visible through your relationships, right? So she literally did marry a government official and she pursued a governmental career herself. Definitely a huge emphasis on seventh house themes for her, in more ways than one, right? They managed so many problems in their relationships, all the scandals, how it impacted their marriage. And so again, in this lifetime, she's learning how to maneuver in these situations, how to balance her needs versus the needs of the partnerships, the relationships. And so another example of a famous person is Bruce Willis here. Again, they definitely were an it couple for a while when he was married to Demi Moore. So his relationships were very, very public, very well known. And of course, he's a public figure. So maybe it was through his partnerships, through his spouses and relationships that he got on the track to being a celebrity, a famous actor. Another famous example here is Arnold Schwarzenegger. And essentially, he has a theme here of being useful. I think even his last book was called Be Useful. And he really loves to convey this message of, relationships with other people and being mutually beneficial to other people. So how can I contribute and how can be useful and of value to other people, which is a very Venusian theme, a very seventh house theme of give and take. And he actually opposes it when people call him a self-made man, because he says, I've never been a self-made man. At any step of the way, any achievement, any accomplishment in my life, I've done it because of collaborating with other people. So I think it's safe to say that he really learned the lesson of his lifetime here with the seventh house placement, because through his relationships, he grew in fame, he grew in popularity, he even got involved in politics, which, as we mentioned, is a very seventh house theme, because you're dealing with the public, because you're in the public eye. And he actually got married to, I don't remember her name exactly, but she was a relative to John Kennedy, I believe. So she's one of the Kennedys. And so through this very strategic partnership, he really put himself in the political sphere. And most likely he wouldn't have ever worked in politics if he hadn't been married to a political figure, to someone who had, maybe not a political figure per se, but someone who had strong ties and connections to the government, to politics somehow. So I think it's a very, very literal manifestation here of all these seventh house themes that we discussed with Arnold Schwarzenegger. He learned the value of co-partnering with other people, of working with others, being of value and service to other people, balancing with other people's needs. He definitely learned a lot of hard lessons through relationships as well. There was this huge scandal, unfortunately, with his infidelity and the parallel family that he had with his housekeeper. So again, dealing with partnerships, what does it mean to be in a relationship? What does it mean to compromise? How can you experience both the negatives and the positives of partnering with other people? These are all seventh house themes, and we can see how they played out in his life. So this is what it means to have Darakaraka placed in the seventh house. You're really here to learn about compromise, about fairness, balance, diplomacy, and communication with other people, and learning how to be a great partner in give and take and equal, fair give and take types of relationships. So what about if you have your Darakaraka placed in the 8th house? This is a very, very interesting, very mysterious place. The 8th house is always the house of taboos, about hidden psychological transformations. A lot of intensity comes into the 8th house. The 8th house is one of the Dushtana houses, one of the houses associated with suffering, but it's also a moksha house, a house of liberation through emotional and spiritual elevation. So it's a complex house. It can play out in very different and mysterious ways. It can be a little bit more difficult to detect the effects of this placement because it's a little bit under the surface. There's a lot of hidden, the 8th house rules the occult, and occult literally means hidden. So it can play out in ways that are not immediately visible to yourself or to other people. It's a very mysterious house. But ultimately, the 8th house themes are about transformation, crises, psychological depth, intimacy, intensity, and shared resources. These are, I would say, the top themes associated with the 8th house. And it can play in many different ways, but I think most commonly, it can be literally experiencing some very transformative relationships that are profoundly intense on an emotional and psychological level, relationships that are characterized by intense passion, because the 8th house is very much about passion, about connecting on many different levels, on a physical level, on a mental level, emotional level, psychologically, someone getting under your skin. That's the 8th house. It's the 2nd house from the 7th. The 7th house is about partnerships, and the 8th house is the bonding that happens after we partner with someone. So we can't really bond with someone unless we trust them. And so the 8th house is very much about the themes of mutual trust, about putting your trust in someone else, about being vulnerable with them, about learning who to be vulnerable with, who can we trust, who can we not trust. It's a scorpionic energy of putting our boundaries up, putting borders between us and other people, and only allowing those that we really, really trust into our intimate sphere. And Scorpio is very much a magnetic, a sexual sign. So it's very possible when you have Darakaraka in the 8th house to experience some profoundly sexually intense relationships and contacts. Maybe your relationships are just profoundly transformational, and it can be through positive and negative ways, or both at the same time, as it usually is in life. You can have some very fundamentally positive and transformatively negative experiences as well, because the 8th house can be a house of things breaking down. It can be a house of crisis. And we develop our psychological resilience. We really learn what we're made of when we go through crisis and when things fall apart, right? So ultimately, it's a house of empowerment, of psychological strength and resilience. But in order to get to that place, we need to really strip ourselves of any kind of fakeness, any kind of superficiality, and really dig deep at the core of our psyche, of our ego. Maybe we experience an ego death through our relationships, and maybe we go through some very dramatic transformation. Just like we saw with Darakaraka placed in the 1st house, the 8th house is also a house where we can experience profound transformations as a result of our relationships. And again, it can be for positive or for negative reasons. We can't really predict that just from the placement in the 8th house, but certainly there will be some profound changes to how you experience life, how you experience safety. But ultimately, the 8th house is a moksha house. Moksha means liberation. And there's a lot of potential here for spiritual evolution with this placement, but we have to be honest with ourselves. We have to be very, very authentic, and we have to be very courageous because, 8th sign is ruled by Mars. So there is always effort, willpower, and courage required to deal with the house, with the 8th house, with the themes of this house. We need to be courageous enough. And ultimately, we develop faith in the divine. Every time we have a moksha house, we let go of things, right? We let go of our superficiality, of our material entanglements, because we have divine trust in the universe to take care of us. And the 8th house is very much about benefiting from other people. And we can't really allow ourselves to benefit from others unless we become very enmeshed with them, very entangled with them. How much we trust others is how much we trust the universe and how much we trust ourselves. If we really feel strong within ourselves, if we really have faith that life is going to take care of us, we can't really fear other people as well, right? Not in a real way, because we think to ourselves, okay, it doesn't matter what they do to me. It doesn't matter if the person betrays me or not, if they lie to me or not. I am strong enough to withstand anything, and the universe will take care of me. So this is the very profound lesson of the 8th house. It's a beautiful lesson, but I understand that when it comes to our day-to-day experiences, it can be a little bit of a challenging house. So here are a couple of different scenarios and core themes that I've listed here for the 8th house Darakaraka placement. Number 1, intense relationships, psychological crisis, resilience, inherited wealth and resources. 8th house is very much about inheritance, about receiving money and resources through the efforts of someone else. So this is not something that we work hard for in a direct way. It's not an income generated from our jobs. It's something that we receive from external sources. So maybe it can, in a very literal and positive sense, it can just mean that you marry someone extremely wealthy, and basically they give you great resources. But also it can mean that maybe you marry someone wealthy, but then you get a divorce, and then you're settled for life because you get spousal support from a very wealthy person. Because 8th house, as we said, is the resources that we get from other people. It can be alimony, it can be support, it can be governmental benefits, it can be tax returns, or it can be inheritance. All of those ways where we profit financially from the efforts of somebody else. It's not directly correlated with the products and services we give to society. The 8th house can be about profound intimacy and bonding. So this is not just any kind of superficial relationship. This is a relationship that shakes you to the core, and you really get to know yourself on a profoundly different level than what you experienced before. It can be about betrayal, about trust issues, psychological strength, experiencing profound emotional sexual connections. It can be about breaks and transformation. It doesn't have to be necessarily about the relationship, but maybe once you meet your partner and once you get together, you have to go through some difficulties. Maybe some relatives pass away. Maybe you experience a sudden ups and downs in your life, sudden breakdowns in your life, something falls apart. And through that crisis that you experience together as a couple, you evolve, you change on a profound level, you become more psychologically resilient, and you discover different things about your soul nature through the crisis that you experience as a couple. So it doesn't have to be directly from your spouse or from your significant other. It can be through experiences that you go through together as a couple. Another aspect of the eighth house is merging with another person. So what it really means to dissolve the boundaries that we have with other people, fully trusting them, fully showing our authentic self to them. No masks, no makeup, just as we are, metaphorically speaking. And another theme is inner resource development. So how strong and resilient do we feel within ourselves so that no crisis or break can actually push us down? We can always pick ourselves up if we feel strong and resilient within ourselves. And another possible scenario is chronic illness. So maybe your significant other or you have to go through a chronic illness together, or maybe someone that you love in the family of your significant other has to go through a chronic illness. Again, these are all experiences that change us on a very profound level, and we're never the same person after that. That's why the eighth house is associated with the phoenix archetype, with the phoenix mythology of rising up from the ashes, of shedding skins. Again, there are so many ways this can play out, and some can be profoundly positive, some profoundly negative, but it doesn't matter, because ultimately what your soul is here to learn through all of these relationship experiences is how to experience life's profound ups and downs, how to transform through psychological crisis, how to develop your inner strength, and how to merge beyond the self, how to dissolve boundaries. All of these houses, 4th, 8th, and 12, are moksha houses, and liberation means we let go of the role we think we're playing as a human being in an earthly existence, and we merge with the divine in one way or another. So maybe you're here to experience a relationship that is just above and beyond what people typically experience in their romantic relationships. Maybe it's such a profoundly romantic, intense, sexual, or just psychologically merging connection that your soul was craving to experience in this lifetime. Maybe in previous lifetimes the focus was not really on romantic entanglements, or even if it was a little bit more on the pragmatic side of things. You know, how can we be responsible together? How can we make a good couple? How do we look good on paper? How do we take care of our kids and our parents, etc., etc.? And maybe in this reincarnation you needed to experience this intense love, like in a novel, like in Wuthering Heights. Wuthering Heights is an 8th house romance and romantic experience. So maybe this is what your soul is craving. It can be fun. It can be a very intense, profound, soul liberating and boundary shattering experience. A couple of examples of famous people who have the Darakaraka in the 8th house are Sean Penn, who definitely had his fair share of tumultuous, intense relationship. Also Amy Winehouse and Whitney Houston. And you can see in those two cases that relationships had actually, unfortunately, a very destructive effect. So if you have this placement, it's important to be mindful and to look for the positive ways that you can nurture and develop your own strength and resilience with these placements, because addictions can also be an 8th house theme, because you're kind of losing the boundaries, you're going through crisis, you're going through things that are hidden, that are beyond your control, and ultimately sabotage your life. And so I think in the cases of Amy Winehouse and Whitney Houston, I think their lives probably would have been much more easy and smooth and productive if they hadn't met those significant others that they met. But again, it's up to you how you handle everything that life gives you. How do you handle yourself? How do you handle a partner who's prone to addiction? How do you handle a partner that you love but is not good for you ultimately? Are you going to be able to develop that resilience to say no and to disassociate from them for your own sake? This can be one of the lessons that you're here to learn. There are no good or bad houses in astrology. We need the lessons of all of the signs, of all of the planets, and of all of the houses in astrology. And I think it's much more empowering and beneficial for us to be in the driver's seat, to see ourselves as the captain of our ship when it comes to our life path, and to see everything as just an element of creation, as an aspect of our diverse universe, and basically grow through that experience rather than wallow in victimhood. Of course, that's easier said than done. Trust me, I know sometimes we go through very earth-shattering experience, very transformative and painful experiences. But again, we can always choose to love ourselves through them and choose what's best for us. So I'm very much looking forward to any examples that you might have from if you have the Darakaraka placed in this house. How has it played out in your romantic life so far? What happens if your Darakaraka is placed in the 9th house in your birth chart? Well, that is considered more of a lucky placement, really, because astrologers tend to really like the 9th house. It's a Jupiterian house. It's the house of tradition, religion, spirituality and beliefs, cultural differences and heritage, gurus, mentors and teachers, wisdom, higher learning, and luck, basically. And so the 9th house teaches us to look at life through a higher perspective, to see the bigger picture in life. And that's why it's associated with gurus and mentors and coaches and teachers, because it's through that kind of higher learning and wisdom of someone more experienced, more knowledgeable than us, that we can elevate our mindset. We can see things through a completely different prism. And having that changed outlook on life and on ourselves, we can take more positive action and improve our life in some way. When you have the Darakaraka placed in the 9th house, maybe you become luckier. You simply become luckier after you start your long-term relationship with someone or after you get married, because the 9th house actually is the house of marriage. It's the house of tradition and morality and ethics and following kind of a certain set of principles. And marriage is one of those traditions, right? That's why it's ruled by the 9th house, because it's a path that we chose because we're following a certain set of rules, a certain traditional outlook on life. And so maybe when you meet your partner, your significant other, and through your relationship, you change your outlook completely. You change your worldview. Maybe you tended to be more of a realist or a pessimist even before you met your significant other. And all of a sudden, when you get together with them, you suddenly become more optimistic. You believe that that good things can come in your life, and that your thoughts and your intentions are very much responsible for the life that you create. And having a positive outlook can only help you. Conversely, it can go the other way around. If it's a very troubled 9th house in your horoscope, maybe you were an optimistic person and then you meet someone, and because of the trauma that they caused you, maybe you feel more unlucky. Maybe you change your outlook. But again, we can always change how we view things, right? So it's definitely within your control, if you wish it to be, to become a more positive person. But ultimately, 9th house is considered more of a fortunate placement in the birth chart. And so your partner can literally make your life a little bit more fortunate, more lucky. Maybe you just have more faith, or maybe your spouse is kind of changing your beliefs about life. Maybe they are from a different religion, and maybe before you met them you were atheist or agnostic. You didn't really want to follow any spirituality, any religious beliefs or dogma, but experiencing life with your partner through your relationship, maybe you get exposed to different cultures, to different religions, to different worldviews, and that completely shifts your spirituality, your belief system. Maybe as a result of your partnership, you both change your outlook. Maybe you were both religious and you both decide to become agnostic after you get together. It can play out in many different ways, but certainly the outcome is that you are not the same person. You have a completely different worldview, because the 9th house is one of the self houses. It's a dharmic house. The 5th, 1st, and 9th houses are considered dharmic houses, which means houses of the self, houses of authentic self-expression. So relationships will have a profound impact on your unique, authentic worldview somehow. It's possible also that you view your partner as your mentor, as your kind of life coach. Maybe every time you lose faith in yourself or faith in your path ahead, in the world around you, your partner, your significant other is there to give you more faith, more hope, to make you believe in your dreams, to believe in your ideals. Sagittarius, which is the ninth sign, is a very optimistic sign. It's the sign of always aiming for something noble, something worth pursuing and sacrificing for, seeing the bigger picture, having a more expansive worldview. So maybe through your partner, you become wiser and you become more goal-oriented, more ambitious. You start believing in yourself, in your dreams, in your ideals. You want to make the world a better place, and you actually believe that that can be possible through your relationship somehow. Or maybe through your relationship, or as a result of getting together with someone, you can be introduced to some very interesting gurus and teachers in your life that completely change your trajectory and your fortune in life. So as you can see, it can be a very fun house, a very expansive house, and it's a bit of a double whammy effect, just like the Darakaraka placed in the 7th house. Darakaraka in the 9th is a strong indicator of marriage, because the 9th house rules marriage and rules tradition. And having your spouse significator, your spouse planet in the 9th house, can be a strong indicator of a happy marriage potentially. So just to kind of recap all the different possible themes that you can experience when you have Darakaraka placed in the 9th house, I've written here expanded worldview, spiritual awakening, faith, optimism, cultural and religious explorations, higher learning and wisdom. Who knows, maybe you relocate to another country or to a different continent together with your partner for a completely different reason, maybe for financial reasons, maybe for family reasons. You have to relocate, and then the culture and the religion that you get exposed to in that new country completely shifts your perspective. That can be another interpretation. So mentors and teachers are ruled by the 9th house. Morality, ethics, you can completely change your ethical and morality viewpoints after becoming in a relationship. Maybe your belief systems can change. Your luck and fortune can suddenly reverse or get enhanced and improved upon once you get together with your significant other. Generosity of spirit is something that is associated with the 9th house, and open-mindedness as well. So no matter how it specifically plays out in your particular life, in your particular circumstances, when we look at evolutionary astrology, when we look at the higher meaning behind this placement, your spiritual lesson you're here to learn is to develop faith, to develop a strong value system, to become more open-minded and more wise with experience through relationships, to see the bigger picture somehow, to align your beliefs with your authentic nature. So again, because it's a Dharma house, you're learning how to be more authentically you. And at first glance, this can be a little bit counterintuitive, right? You use your partners and your relationships to be more authentically you, right? But it doesn't have to be this way, because sometimes having the support, the empathy, the wisdom and the love of someone that really, really sees you for who you are, really cares about you, it can really open you up to expanding your soul, to open up yourself to the world, and to allow the world to see the real you. Because sometimes, depending on our upbringing, the circumstances that we grow up with, we can be very shy, we can be very timid, lack belief in ourselves, we can be with low self-esteem, right? Or we can pretend to be something that we're not for the sake of survival or acceptance by our environment. And with the right partner sometimes, with the love and support and unconditional love that we experience through the right partnership, it can really open us up to realizing who we really are. And that's why being in a Dharma house, the Darakaraka being in a Dharmic house, can really make you more of who you authentically are. And I think that's a really beautiful thing. Now let's look at a couple of famous examples here. We have Sophia Loren. Now Sophia Loren is actually a very, very interesting example. So she was only 15 years old when she met Carlo Ponti in 1950. At the time he was 37, he was married with 2 children. And so in the beginning, she was a very, very young girl who wanted to be an actress, and he acted as her mentor, and he helped guide her in her early film career. And so this is, first of all, a 9th house theme in itself, because the 9th house rules teachers and mentors and gurus. And so he was coaching her about how to become a star, how to become a famous actress. But over time, their relationship became romantic. At the time, after, he wanted to get a divorce, actually that wasn't possible because at this time, Italy didn't allow divorce. The Catholic Church didn't recognize civil divorces either. And so when Ponti tried to divorce his first wife and marry Sophia Loren in the early 1960s, Italian authorities didn't consider it legal, and the situation even led to bigamy charges. So they tried to solve the problem in many different ways, and finally, the problem was only resolved when Ponti's first wife, him and Sophia Loren, actually became French citizens so that he could legally divorce under French law. And then in 1966, he was finally able to remarry Sophia Loren. So it was a major scandal at the time, and it caused serious tension with the Catholic Church. And now the interesting thing is that Sophia Loren's Darakaraka is Venus. And Venus in her natal chart is debilitated in Virgo. And so we see how the debilitated Darakaraka in the ninth house caused problem with religion, with traditions, with the law even, and just caused a lot of controversies in people's opinions about their ethics and morality within that couple. So I thought that was very, very interesting as an example. We have also Matt Damon here. And I think Matt Damon is one of those celebrities that has had a very long-lasting marriage, and he tries to be more of like a traditional husband and father on, in terms of Hollywood standards, right? And then we have Emmanuel Macron, who actually married someone much older than him. So here we have this kind of ninth house theme of your spouse being a little bit your mentor, your guru, your teacher. And most likely, he fell in love with his wife partly because he felt luckier with her, because she expanded his worldview. He saw her as someone very wise, someone expansive, who allowed him to see himself and the world in a completely different way. I can't know the exact circumstances, but I found it interesting that most likely, he views his partner, his significant other, as maybe his mentor, his guru, his wise teacher in some ways. What happens if your Darakaraka is placed in the most visible place, the 10th house? The 10th house rules the sky in Vedic astrology because it's the highest place in the zodiac wheel. It's up there for everyone to see. That's why it has associations with our career and professional status, because ultimately where we direct a lot of our efforts and where we become most prominent and visible to other people and to the most people is through our profession, through our career and work endeavors. And so because it's also a material house and an action house, this is a very proactive, very work-oriented house. So it's very possible with the Darakaraka placed in the 10th house that you have a partner, a significant other who helps you with your career somehow, helps you with your status in society, because it makes you very visible, this placement, right? You gain visibility through your spouse, through your relationships, through your partnership somehow. Or maybe your partner is someone who works in the same professional domain as you. And so together you have a lot of 10th house emphasis there because you're putting a lot of effort into kind of the same sphere in life. The 10th house is about our public status. So maybe through your relationships, through your marriage, you get elevated in status somehow, or you shift your status in society dramatically after you start your relationships. The 10th house is about reputation, right? It's the most visible place. So what are we renowned for? What are we known for? What is going to be our legacy? Your partner and your relationships will have a very big impact on your reputation with this placement. And so this can play out in different ways. Maybe you have a partner who inspires you to be more productive in your work sphere, in your professional life. Or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you had a lot of focus on the 10th house, and with your relationships, you started focusing less on your reputation and your public visibility, depending on which planet it is and how it's impacted by other factors in the natal chart. Maybe after your relationships, you decide to withdraw a little bit from public life and to focus more on the private sphere. But it's more likely, I I think that there will be more emphasis, more manifestation happening in your career place, in your career sphere of your life. And it's possible also that you will be in relationships with people that either enhance your career or are members of the same kind of professional domain as you. So here are a couple of themes that I've listed here associated with the 10th house placement of the Darakaraka. We have career transformation and advancement being possible with this placement. We have professional partnerships being emphasized, public visibility and status being very much affected, work-related projects being emphasized, professional reputation, leadership roles, public service, workplace meetings, professional elevation, career opportunities, and public persona. So there is a lot of focus here on kind of the more material, more pragmatic side of life. The 10th house is about the effort that we put into to fulfill our financial responsibilities, not only to ourselves, but also to the world at large, because again, it's the visible place by other people. So it's work that you do that makes you well known among other people. So it's very possible that you collaborate with your spouse on certain work projects, on certain professional endeavors, or maybe your partner and your relationship can really enhance your public image and can really put you on a completely different career path. It's possible that when you were single, you were pursuing a certain kind of profession, and then once you meet your significant other, all of a sudden that shifts and you begin a completely different career path, and maybe a path that makes you more prominent, more visible somehow. It's possible that together you embark, together as a couple, you embark on a business engagement or a professional project that makes you both very well known for the project of working together on that assignment. So it's very much related to your place in society, your visibility, your reputation, your status, and your professional accomplishments. Maybe through having a partner, this can really boost your career. I mean, think of how many men, especially back in the day, but even now, to this day, how many men become much more prominent in their careers. First of all, because they have a supportive wife who takes care of the domestic life and all the responsibilities of life that are outside of his work sphere. And maybe they're the ones taking care of all of the domestic tasks, all the household work, and taking care of the children. And maybe the wife also has certain connections and can help her husband in his career. It can also, of course, be the other way around. Maybe you meet someone as a woman, maybe you meet a man who is very professionally connected and has the right connections and the right sphere of influence to really put you on the right track career-wise. So it can play out in many different ways, but either way, there will be a lot of focus here on your status in society, on your work, on your visibility out in the big wide world, and also on your professional work, professional accomplishment. It's a house of hard work, really, because it's an action house and it's an art house of material responsibility. So it's very pragmatic and very action-oriented. You're putting a lot of time and effort and dedication into your work through your relationships. And so no matter how it actually plays out concretely, ultimately the soul is here to learn about hard work, about proving yourself through dedication, about showing up in the world, being visible, and creating a professional legacy through service. In Vedic astrology, the 10th house is known as the ultimate karma house, because ultimately we do work in order to benefit the world somehow, in order to be of use somehow to society through our product, services, and hard work. So let's look at a couple of examples of famous people, well-known people who have the Darakaraka in their 10th house. We start with Angelina Jolie. Now, Angelina Jolie is an interesting example because she has been an actress for all of her life because, you know, she comes from a family that worked in Hollywood. Her father was a famous Hollywood actor, so she certainly didn't need a spouse or a significant other to make it into Hollywood. She did that all by herself. However, I do think that her high-profile relationship with Brad Pitt definitely made her a celebrity of a different kind of level, different dimension. They were definitely the it couple for a while. You know, Brangelina was a very big phenomenon in the world of celebrity. So she became a celebrity. She increased, let's say, her celebrity status through her relationships, and also she collaborated with Brad Pitt on some professional projects. They worked together as producer, director, actors together. They actually met through her work, right? So if you look at Angelina Jolie, all of her major relationships have been with fellow actors, people who also worked in Hollywood. Her previous husband, she also met through work. It was with Billy Bob Thornton that she was married to before being married to Brad Pitt. So you see her relationships and her work life, her professional engagements are very much one and the same. They're very much overlapping. And from her interviews about Brad Pitt, I know that she was saying that he really inspires her to work even harder, to push herself even more. They basically were very collaborative together. They became even more ambitious as they became a couple. And they did a lot of humanitarian work as well, which is also a 10th house thing, because it's, again, a karma house, a house of creating your karma and being action oriented, being of service to the world. She definitely boosted her humanitarian efforts even more after she got together with Brad Pitt. She benefited also certainly from his status and resources and connections to be able to do even more charity work, and she became an ambassador of the UN. So I think it's very visible here, very obvious here, how her relationships impacted her work and professional status and celebrity status a lot. We also have Tom Cruise as an example here. He's another one who basically, his major relationships have been with fellow actresses. So he was married to Nicole Kidman and they did a very well-known movie together. He was then married to Katie Holmes, who's also a well-known actress. We have also a few other examples here. We have Harrison Ford, who's married to Callista Flockhart, who's also a Hollywood actress. So you see, work and personal life are very much entangled when you have displacement, or at least that's a possibility. Another example is Celine Dion, and she was basically married to, I don't know if you call it a manager or a producer, I'm not sure what exactly role her husband played, but he was extremely involved in her career, throughout her professional career. So they were definitely like a unit, a working partnership, not only in the private sphere, but also in the professional sphere. So when you have the Darakaraka in this house, the lesson is to focus a lot on your working lives, on your status in society, and to be of service to society in some capacity. What happens if your Darakaraka is placed in the glamorous 11th house? 11th house is a very fun one because it's the house of social accolades, of hopes, dreams, and wishes coming true. The 11th house is something that we gain in terms of social credit, of social recognition somehow. And it's achieved usually through hard work, through connections with other people, through belonging to large groups and organizations, through our social circles and acquaintances. 11th house is a very social house. It's the house of big organizations, of peers that you have a shared goal, shared cause, or shared interest with. It's not just your intimate friends, your high school friends or buddies or neighborhood friends. It's the peers and the acquaintances and contacts you have through your social influence, or people who can boost your social influence. And it's also people that you team up with as part of a larger goal, as part of something that collectively you're trying to achieve. It can be a cause, it can be an organization, it can be a big corporation of some type. But obviously when you're part of something bigger like that, when you consistently communicate with many people, you expand your possibilities of receiving some benefits in return, right? The more people you know, the more connections you have, especially when it comes to certain things that you're passionate about, certain things that you're involved with, the higher your chances of getting social and financial remuneration and recognition for all of your work and your collaboration with other people. So when we have the Darakaraka in this house, this can be a very positive contribution to our social status, to the dividends we get from society, through the recognition and the value and remuneration that we get as a consequence of our significant relationships, of our love life. It's possible that our spouse, our significant other, introduces us to a completely different social circle, to a completely different group of people. Maybe through our spouse, we start becoming members of certain large organizations, certain corporations, certain charities and foundations, maybe even in politics. 11th house is very much a political house. It doesn't even necessarily have to be as a direct consequence of your intimate partner or your relationship. Maybe just life evolves in a way that after you become more settled down with a partner, maybe after you've been in a serious relationship, your focus shifts to something more humanitarian, more political, something on a larger scale, because the 11th house is very much about our grandest, our most risky, let's say, sought after ambitious and goals and objectives in life. Something that makes us very prominent in society or very well remunerated somehow. And the bigger projects we're involved with, the bigger the collective that we're able to help with our resources and time and effort that we dedicate to them, the bigger the dividends that we get back in return in most cases. So it's possible that after you get settled down, after you get into a serious relationship, you become more involved with more collective projects, you become more social, more socially engaged. Maybe you take part in charity, in organizations, maybe you join a large corporation, and that completely alters your status in society, because the 11th house is what we receive as recognition and rewards for the work that we've been putting in for a very long time. It's definitely a house of consistent effort. It rules titles and diplomas and credentials. So for example, if you have a PhD, that's an 11th house thing. It requires a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of prioritization of your goals and objectives, your bigger goals, which is the 11th house. And once you accomplish that goal, it's yours forever. You will forever be an accomplished PhD. You will always be a doctor in the eyes of society. So it's really working within the frameworks of society and benefiting when it comes to social credit for all of your achievements and all of your contributions. So here is a list of kind of core themes and keywords that are associated with the Darakaraka being placed in the 11th house: status and glamour, social elevation, group belonging, organizations, popular culture and fame, social networks, dream fulfillment, pure acceptance and respect. As we said, it's a very, very social house. It's the house of desires. 3rd, 7th, and 11th house are the houses of desires. And whenever we have desires, we typically have other people, right? We accomplish our desires with and through other people usually. So pure acceptance, respect, credentials, achievements are ruled by the 11th house, social proof, cause-based activism. Again, it can be a very humanitarian placement. 11th house is everything we do as a society or to benefit society in a wider aspect, and then like-minded community as well. So it's a very, very social house. But no matter how it actually manifests, how it plays out, no matter the specific circumstance, what is the spiritual lesson here? What is the ultimate lesson that our soul is here to learn with this reincarnation through our partnerships, through our romantic relationships? You're here to fulfill your grand ambitions and dreams, to learn to collaborate with your peers, and to be a part of something bigger than yourself. You gain elevated social status through your relationship somehow and through your hard work and contributions. So in terms of examples of celebrities who have their Darakaraka placed in the 11th house, I thought a very interesting example would be Kim Kardashian. Now, Kim Kardashian is one of those personalities that whether you want to or not, you probably know her story, but just to give a very, very quick recap of how her relationships have affected her popularity, status, and fame, if you will, and her social circle. So she was somewhat known already in Hollywood as a friend and stylist of Paris Hilton, irrespective of any kind of romantic entanglements. But her rise to fame really took off in 2007. And so that year, a private sex tape that she had made with Ray J was leaked online. Nobody knows exactly who leaked it. There are some rumors that it was actually her mother who leaked it because she really wanted her to be a popular figure, a celebrity. And so this sex tape created a media frenzy that really put her name everywhere almost overnight. The publicity was scandalous, but it also brought massive attention to Kim Kardashian and set the stage for her reality show, Keeping Up with the Kardashians, which premiered later that same year. And so from then on, her relationships have consistently amplified her fame. Dating high-profile men like Reggie Bush, Kanye West, and Pete Davidson have kept her in the headlines and reinforced her celebrity status, especially her marriage to Kanye West, because this really transformed her image from reality TV star to a global fashion and cultural influencer, giving her access to elite brands, fashion campaigns, and major pop culture moments. And so, in short, you can see how her relationships really catapulted her into unknown levels of kind of celebrity and popularity. Literally everyone knows Kim Kardashian nowadays, right? And for the last 10 years or so, I would say. And so her relationships really expanded her visibility, influence, and mainstream cultural relevance, which is extremely very much an 11th house theme. And the interesting thing about her chart is that her Darakaraka Saturn is exalted in the 11th house, and it's together with the sun. The sun is usually a karaka for our career and personality, personal status in society to some extent. And so her Darakaraka is exalted. At the same time, however, we see that Venus, which is also a karaka for relationships on its own in everyone's charts, is debilitated. So she hasn't necessarily had the happiest romantic relationships with men. She hasn't been the happiest in her marriages, and her marriages haven't really lasted, right? However, you can see that through the Darakaraka being placed in the 11th and being exalted, that has really helped elevate her status in more ways than one. And then we have Catherine Zeta-Jones, who again was a Welsh actress that became a Hollywood celebrity, and her celebrity status was definitely improved upon and increased when she married Michael Douglas, who at the time was much older than her, and he was a very, very well-established and sought-after actor in Hollywood. I don't know if you remember, but he was a very prominent figure in 90s and big 90s Hollywood productions. So I think it's safe to say that Catherine Zeta-Jones profited in some ways in terms of social status and glamour and kind of social contacts through her relationship with her husband, Michael Douglas. So this is kind of what you can expect from the Darakaraka placed in the 11th house. It can be a very glamorous placement, and it can be really beneficial for you to partner with the right people for the sake of your ambitions and your big goals in life and the achievement of your hopes and dreams. Finally, what happens when we have our Darakaraka, our spouse planet, placed in the 12th house in our birth chart? This is a very different energy from the previous houses. The 12th house is the last house on the zodiac wheel, so it signifies the end of a certain cycle. So it's associated with endings, with letting go, with charity, with self-denial, with the release of ego, with ego deaths, and kind of selflessly giving to other people. And so the connotations of this house are very, very different and can be a little bit more subtle, but they can also manifest on a very material level through a lot of charity for the sake of our partner. So when we have our Darakaraka in the 12th, it's possible that we give more than we receive. Okay, at least at a certain stage of our relationship, you have to kind of accept that it was your soul's choice in this lifetime to be a little bit selfless, to be more charitable towards your spouse, or to become more charitable because of your relationship, because of the way that your partner changed you and changed how you view the world. Somehow you became more benevolent, more gracious to other people, more empathetic, more charitable, and more self-denying and giving. It can be a very, especially in the best case scenario, it can be a very charitable placement of someone who's not really self-absorbed, not really ego-driven, someone who doesn't really care about status, about how much money they have in the bank account, of what people think of them, but rather prioritizes the well-being of other people. It can be a very self-sacrificial house. It can be it's the house of donations and charity, and it's also the house of faraway lands. So there can be some foreign connections here as well. Maybe your partner will be a foreigner, or together you will move to a foreign country, or maybe together you will have some moksha liberation experiences together of spiritual devotion, of charity, of selflessly giving for a cause, of giving of ourselves for the sake of another person or another animal or another cause. The 12th house can also be potentially a sexual house as well, because the 12th house rules fantasies and sleeping, and also anything associated with beds, including, your love life. And so maybe it can be a very romantic partnership. Maybe it can be a very sexually charged partnership. Maybe through your spouse or through your relationship, you get transported to a completely different fantasy world. You forget about the mundane existence and the responsibilities of life, and you're seeking a little bit of escapism. In the worst case scenarios, of course, this can be a house of loss, a house of letting go, a house of addictions and self-undoing, because, the house has Pisces connotations, and the Pisces is represented by the two fish. So the two fish are represented as pointing in two opposite directions. So it can go either way. It can be a very elevated placement, or you can reach the lowest of the lows with this placement. So maybe your partner is someone who comes from extreme poverty. Maybe your partner is an addict. Maybe you attract partners who are very addictive or who end up being institutionalized. Of course, I don't want to scare you. I'm just listing all the possible manifestations of the 12th house. But either way, you're always here to grow and to learn from these experiences. But it's possible that your spouse is someone who is maybe bedridden due to a disease. Maybe they're institutionalized. Maybe they end up going to prison. The 12th house rules everything that is far away from the main daily life, from the society, a little bit hidden, a little bit far away. And again, it's a house of charity, of letting go of the ego. But in the best case scenario, it can be a very charitable placement. You learn how to be more giving. You learn how to be selfless through your relationships, or you attract a partner who's very selfless towards you. Someone who's very charitable, or someone who enables you to be able to be charitable with others. Maybe you can even marry someone extremely wealthy, and you let go of all your profession and worldly attachments and caring about meeting your material needs, and you can finally devote yourself to a cause that you've been passionate about. Maybe you care about animals' well-being, and maybe you start a charity. The 12th house can also be the entertainment sector, because entertainment is definitely about escaping into like a fantasy world. And maybe your spouse can put you in touch with some artistic endeavors or some kind of entertainment industry endeavors. Maybe you can become an artist, or maybe your partner is in the artistic fields. There are a lot of different connotations of the 12th house. So a couple of kind of keywords and potential scenarios that we can see here with the 12th house placement of the Darakaraka are ego, death and rebirth, selflessness and giving, foreign spouse, foreign residence, expenditures and charity, losses and letting go, spiritual evolution, dissolution of boundaries, sacrifice and generosity, endings and closure, cultural adaptation, and spirituality and divine connection. And so a couple of different scenarios, just to give you some examples. It's possible that once you get together with your partner, you both experience a sense of loss. Maybe someone in your life, maybe some family member passes away. And through that experience that affects you deeply, you spiritually evolve, both of you. Or maybe you go through a profound emotional transformation because of a sense of loss, because of grieving. Or you become more charitable because something happens in your life that urges you to see things outside of your kind of ego prism. Maybe in the past you were a little bit more selfish, more self-centered, and after meeting your partner, you become much more selfless. You become much more giving towards other people, animals, society at large. It's possible also that you increase a lot your expenditures, because the 12th house in a very literal sense is about spending, about losing, or just literal expenditures of money. So another possible scenario is that through your partner, you both become very, very wealthy together, and you're able to spend more money. You will actually find that in the natal charts of a lot of famous people, a lot of wealthy people, you will see very, very strong 12th house placements, because the 12th house is about expenditures and charity. And who can give more to charity? Who can spend more money than wealthy people, right? You have to have it in order to spend it. And so even though the 12th house is associated with expenditures, don't expect it to give necessarily poverty or lack or anything like that. It can literally be the enablement of you being very charitable and very you can even become a shopaholic, if you will. Maybe you just spend a lot of money on properties or on charity endeavors, simply because together in the relationship, you manage to accumulate a lot of money that allows you then to spend a lot of money. But no matter how it actually plays out in terms of concrete manifestations, what is the actual spiritual lesson of the Darakaraka in the 12th house? Well, your soul is here to learn to let go of ego attachments and self-absorption. You're learning the freedom and happiness of putting others first. Maybe here you realize your universal connectedness to anyone, everyone, and everything in the universe. It's a moksha house, right? So it always carries connotations of potential for spiritual development. So through your relationship, through your love, maybe you realize that there is no such thing as I and you and my or mine, and everything is interconnected. That's the most beautiful manifestation of the 12th house energy. A couple of examples of celebrities who have 12th house Darakaraka: Madonna, Michael Douglas, Donald Trump, Adele. And you know what all of these celebrities have in common? They've all been or are currently married to foreigners. Madonna was married to a British person and actually lived in Britain for a while. Michael Douglas is an American actor who married a Welsh actress. Donald Trump has had 2 wives from foreign countries with completely different cultures, both of them from Europe. And then Adele, who is British, married an American. So I think it's very interesting, this kind of strong foreign theme here, theme of faraway places here with the 12th house Darakaraka placement. But also you will find that in all of these charts, in all of these famous people, they tend to be the money makers in the relationship, even though they might be married to people who are also quite wealthy, but definitely they end up spending more than their spouse because they just have much more fortune. So you see the theme of spending and charity and foreign living and foreign connections here in a very big way. And Madonna actually did a lot of charity. Now, I don't know if it was connected directly with her relationships, but it's possible that through her romantic endeavors, she just learned to put others first somehow, and that spiked her curiosity about contributing to worthy causes somehow. So I found those celebrities quite interesting for a lot of the themes that we were discussing, but in the best way possible. The 12th house is here to teach you to let go of any kind of material attachments, to let go of ego identifications. It's the end of a cycle. So a lot of your lessons through relationships will be learned through psychological transformations that may be triggered through loss, but not necessarily events related to a lot of struggle or a lot of suffering. Simply realizing that we're all connected and we should have empathy for one another. So it can be a very beautiful placement. So there you have it, the Darakaraka through all 12 houses and all the lessons that it can share with us about what we're here to learn through our spouses, our significant others and partners, and through our relationship experiences. I think you will agree with me that it's much more empowering to believe that things are happening for us and not to us, that whatever the experience, whether positive or negative in the moment, it carries with it a certain level of growth and wisdom that we wouldn't have experienced had it not been for that specific challenge or experience. And I'm looking forward to hear from you. Where is your Darakaraka placed in your chart? What did that teach you about yourself, about your relationships, about life in general? And did you find the interpretations resonated, at least to some extent, with your life experiences? I very much look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much for your support for my channel. Thank you for liking and commenting under my videos. And I very much look forward to seeing you in the next video. And I very much look forward to seeing you in the next one.